Well, this week Nintendo shocked everybody by announcing that the Virtual Boy, yes, their most infamous flop, is finally making a comeback on Nintendo Switch Online. For many players, this is going to be the first time they even hear about this console. The Virtual Boy wasn't just unusual, it was a bold experiment that promised futuristic 3D gaming, but ended up as one of Nintendo's fastest failures. Well, today we're going to go back to the mid-90s to uncover the story behind this bizarre red console, why it crashed so hard, and why its return in 2026 matters more than you might think. Well, if you enjoy the video, hit that subscribe button down below for even more Nintendo content here on Power Up Direct. Well, first of all, we have the big promise. So in the mid-1990s, Nintendo was on top of the world. The Nintendo Entertainment System and the Super Nintendo had cemented the company as a household name, and the Game Boy was proving unstoppable in the handheld market. But behind the scenes, Nintendo was already looking for its next big innovation, the kind of leap forward that will once again change the way that people played games. Well, at the time, virtual reality was more than just a buzzword, it was the future. Arcades experimented with bulky VR headsets, movies painted visions of immersive digital worlds, and technology companies raced to capture that sci-fi dream. Nintendo wanted in. Their vision was a device that would deliver true 3D graphics, something no home console had ever done before. And that vision fell to Gunpei Yokoi, one of Nintendo's most legendary creators and the mind behind the Game Boy. His design philosophy, what he called lateral thinking with withered technology, was all about using cheap, existing tech in clever ways. With the Virtual Boy, the idea was to take affordable LED displays and transform them into a 3D stereoscopic experience, making players feel like they were stepping into the game itself. For Nintendo, this wasn't just another console, it was a promise of the future. A bold step into immersive gaming at a time when no one else dared to try, and on paper it looked like the next revolutionary leap, but as history would show, that promise didn't quite match the reality. Well, next up we've got the reality of the Virtual Boy. So when the Virtual Boy finally arrived in 1995, the reality was far less futuristic than the Nintendo's marketing suggested. Rather than being a sleek VR headset, it was a bulky tabletop console that players had to lean into, like peering through a pair of stationary binoculars. There was no strap, no freedom of movement, just a headset mounted on a stand with the controller plugged in underneath. The display was its most infamous trait. Instead of full colour, the Virtual Boy used red LED lights projected into mirrors to create a stereoscopic 3D effect. The result was a world of harsh black and red graphics that quickly caused eye strain, headaches and even nausea for many players. And the effect was technically 3D, but it wasn't the immersive virtual reality people had imagined when they first heard the name. Beyond the visuals, the system struggled with practicality. Nintendo had advertised it as portable, but in reality it required a stable surface to get set up, and the awkward viewing position made long play sessions uncomfortable. The design was caught in a strange middle ground, not quite a home console, not quite a handheld, and not truly VR either. Even the games reflected the compromise. Titles like Mario Tennis and Red Alarm showcased the 3D effect, but the library for the console was really small, and most experiences felt like tech demos rather than fully fledged adventures. For players expecting the next revolution in gaming, the Virtual Boy quickly revealed itself as more of a curiosity than a breakthrough. Well, next up we've got the fall. So the problems with the Virtual Boy became clear almost immediately after launch. Released in Japan in July 1995, and just a month later in North America, it hit store shelves at $179.95, cheaper than a home console but still a big price for something marketed as a side experience. At first, Nintendo leaned heavily into flashy marketing campaigns that promised a bold step into virtual reality, but consumer excitement never truly materialised. Sales were sluggish from the very beginning. The console's awkward design and uncomfortable visuals spread quickly through word of mouth, and many parents were hesitant to buy a machine that was being linked to eye strain and headaches. To make matters worse, Nintendo struggled to support the system with compelling software. In its short lifespan, only 22 official licensed games were released worldwide, with the majority never leaving Japan. Timing also worked against the Virtual Boy. So while Nintendo was trying to push this strange red and black experiment, Sony's PlayStation was exploding in popularity with cutting-edge 3D graphics, a massive library of games, and strong third-party support. Gamers who wanted the future were already finding it on competing platforms. Within less than a year, Nintendo quietly pulled the plug. The Virtual Boy sold fewer than 800,000 units worldwide, making it one of the company's worst performing consoles ever. By 1996, production had stopped and Nintendo had already shifted its attention to the upcoming Nintendo 64. What was once billed as the future of gaming was now remembered as a curious misstep and a reminder that even Nintendo could make mistakes. Well, next up we got the legacy. So although Virtual Boy was a commercial disaster, its legacy turned out to be more meaningful than the sales chart suggested. For Nintendo, the console was a hard lesson in the risks of chasing futuristic ideas before the technology was truly ready. It highlighted the dangers of marketing ambition over playability and the importance of aligning bold hardware with strong software support. The failure also had a personal impact inside Nintendo. Gunpei Yokoi, the legendary designer behind the Game Boy and a driving force behind the Virtual Boy, left the company shortly after the console's demise. While his reputation took a bit of a hit at the time, his philosophy of lateral thinking with withered technology continued to shape Nintendo's DNA. That mindset, using simple, affordable tech in creative ways, would later fuel the success of consoles like the Nintendo DS, the Wii, and also eventually the Nintendo Switch. Beyond Nintendo's internal lessons, the Virtual Boy had developed a small but passionate cult following. Collectors treasure the system as a rare oddity, and homebrew developers have even continued making new games for it decades later. What was once mocked as a failure, over time has been reframed as one of gaming's most fascinating what-ifs, a bold experiment that simply arrived too early. Yet perhaps most importantly, the Virtual Boy proved that failure doesn't define a company. Instead, it became part of Nintendo's larger story, a stumble that reminded them to balance innovation with accessibility, and in many ways the willingness to take risks, even if it means falling flat, is exactly what has kept Nintendo so unique in the gaming industry. Well, next up we've got the comeback. So fast forward 3 decades and the Virtual Boy is finally getting a second chance. So recently in September 2025, Nintendo announced during their Nintendo Direct presentation that the Virtual Boy's library would be joining Nintendo Switch Online, making these games legally and easily accessible for the very first time since their original release. For a system that many gamers never even saw in person, this is a major moment of preservation. Bringing the Virtual Boy to Nintendo Switch Online does more than just expand the service's catalogue, it rewrites how the console is remembered. Instead of being trapped in obscurity or relegated to collectors' shelves, its games can now be experienced by a whole new generation. We've got Mario Tennis, Wario Land, Red Alarm, and they can all finally be judged on their own merits, outside the shadow of the awkward hardware that they were tied to. There's also a sense of closure in this revival. Nintendo has often been selective about which parts of its history it acknowledges, but including the Virtual Boy signals a willingness to embrace even their failures as part of the company's identity. It's an admission that while the hardware may have flopped, the ambition behind it is still worth celebrating. Well, for players today, the comeback offers a chance to engage with gaming history in a way that wasn't possible before. The Virtual Boy may never have lived up to its promise of virtual reality, but its rebirth on modern hardware ensures it won't be forgotten. Instead, it becomes a reminder of how experimentation, even when it fails, can shape the future of a company. Well, the Virtual Boy may have been one of Nintendo's greatest failures, but its story so far is more important than the sales numbers suggest. It represents the risks that come with innovation, the vision of a legendary creator, and the lessons that have shaped Nintendo's future successes. And now with the games finally accessible on modern hardware, the Virtual Boy has a chance to be remembered not just as a flop, but as an experiment ahead of its time. Well, the question is now, will players finally give it the recognition it never had, or will history simply repeat itself? Well, let me know in the comments what you think about the Virtual Boy coming back. Are you going to pre-order the Virtual Boy or play it when it comes out? If you're interested, I'd keep your eyes on the Nintendo store. You can pre-order that mock-up Virtual Boy console and also the cardboard version as well, which you are going to need to play the Virtual Boy games. Well, that is it for this look at the rise and fall and rise again of the Virtual Boy via Nintendo Switch Online. And as always, thank you so much for watching or for listening. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button down below for even more Nintendo content here on Power Up Direct. Thanks again, and I shall see you real soon.